It is now my privilege to introduce United States Congressman Mike Doyle, who represents Pennsylvania's 14th Congressional District. As mentioned yesterday, Pennsylvania has the fourth largest veterans population in the nation, with nearly 940,000 veterans. More than 52,000 of them reside in his 14th district, to include incoming VFW National Commander-in-Chief, Big John Bajetsky. This is Mr. Doyle's 11th term in Congress, and his top priorities include revitalizing communities, economic development, high-tech initiatives, jobs, education, and a comprehensive long-term national energy strategy. Comrades and distinguished guests, please welcome from Pennsylvania's 14th Congressional District, Congressman Mike Doyle.
Thank you very much. Thank you and good morning. It's an honor and a privilege to welcome the VFW back to Pittsburgh for this year's convention. Now, I'm not quite old enough to remember the last time you were here, but I can assure you that we're very pleased to welcome you back, and we hope you have a productive meeting and an enjoyable visit. You know, our city has a lot to offer, from great food to great music, and I don't want to jinx this, great sports teams, and you're going to find a lot of warm, friendly people here. And I hope that you'll get out and see our exciting city while you're here and spend a lot of money. Pennsylvania has a long, proud history of service in the military, especially the folks right here in Western Pennsylvania. People have either served in the military or they have family and friends who have. Consequently, we greatly respect and appreciate your service to our nation, and I can assure you, you're going to be warmly welcome here in Pittsburgh. I'm also very proud to see the incoming Commander-in-Chief is from Pittsburgh, our own Big John Bajetsky. I want to congratulate you, Big John, wish you well. I'm confident that Big John's going to do an outstanding job for the VFW. Now, I know I'm just a warm-up act for the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, but I'm honored to be invited to address you today and to thank you for your service to the country. I don't know whether my father was a member of the VFW, but he certainly was a veteran of a foreign war. He served as a forward observer in General Patton's Third Army in Europe in World War II. He saw combat and he was wounded. My father came home 100% service-connected disabled veteran, and my family saw firsthand the kind of challenges that many veterans face. Our experience helped us appreciate just what sacrifice for one's country really means on a day-to-day, ongoing basis, but also how important the benefits that the VA provides to veterans can be. I get it. I'm proud of my father's service and his sacrifice for our country, and I understand that our country takes care of its veterans and their families. That's one of the reasons I work in Congress, to make sure that veterans across this country, and especially veterans here in southwestern Pennsylvania, receive the assistance they need and deserve. And the same goes for our men and women on active duty in the armed forces. I've been honored to serve 2 stints in the House Veterans Affairs Committee during my time in Congress, and I've made it a top priority to make sure that the VA has the resources it needs to give prompt, effective service to our veterans, and that it does the job right. Certainly, one of the ways we can show our thanks to those Americans who have risked their lives in dangerous places around the world is to ensure that they get top quality medical care. And I know that's a top concern for the VFW. And as you might imagine, with my family's history, I share that concern. And I've always worked hard to ensure that our veterans get the care when they need it. You know, given the constant demands of combat service in Iraq and Afghanistan over the last 14 years, the extensive use of IEDs in both those theaters, and our improved ability to save many wounded personnel who would have died on the battlefield in previous years, we've seen many more complicated medical cases in both DoD and VA healthcare systems in recent years, especially with regards to loss of limbs and traumatic brain injuries. The VA does outstanding research on the healthcare challenges facing veterans, and I've consistently supported increased funding for such research, including research on traumatic injuries to extremities. This year I co-sponsored in Congress the Toxic Exposure Research Act. It's a bill to establish a VA center for research into the health conditions experienced by descendants of veterans exposed to toxic substances like Agent Orange in Vietnam or neurotoxins in the Gulf War. After more than a decade of nonstop war, veterans with post-traumatic stress disorders and other mental health issues have exceeded our existing resources for dealing with them. I supported the Clay Hunt Suicide Prevention Act in the last Congress and again this year to address the current epidemic of suicides among veterans and active duty military personnel. And I was pleased when it was approved and signed into law by the President earlier this year. We've also consistently supported efforts to reduce homelessness among veterans, but I believe more needs to be done. I was frankly pretty angry a year ago when I found out about the long wait times at VA healthcare facilities across this country, and that a number of local veterans have been waiting on a list for more than a year to get an appointment at the VA. I demanded that this local VA in Pittsburgh contact everyone on that list immediately and get them the services they needed. My staff and I had often daily contact with the VA until that backlog was eliminated. I supported the Veterans Access, Choice, and Accountability Act last year to reform the VA and provide additional resources to meet our veterans' health care needs in a reasonable period of time. And I'm pleased to say that over the last year, complaints about long waiting times for access to health care at the local VA here in Pittsburgh has declined significantly. We need to do more, however, if we want to live up to our obligations to our veterans today. While I believe that most VA employees care deeply about the men and women they serve, we can still do better. 14 years of war in multiple theaters, a long way from home, have produced a large new generation of veterans who want, need, and deserve the VA's help. As much as the funding has increased since 9/11 for VA, the demand has increased more. The VA, the federal government, and especially Congress must do more to reform and adequately fund VA in order to meet all our veterans' needs. It's going to take a long-term commitment to both to properly serve our veterans. And more importantly, it's going to take a serious attitude adjustment in Congress. Too many members of Congress seem to think that military action is the first and best solution to every international problem. A week doesn't go by when we don't hear someone on Capitol Hill call for another short, pain-free war where we'll be greeted as liberators. And I don't know what's worse, someone who really believes that or someone who really doesn't care. But what I do know is that the cost doesn't end when the fighting stops. A tour of duty in a combat zone can result in decades of disability and health care needs. When the elected leaders of this country send our men and women in the military on such missions, we also take on an inescapable obligation to care for them and their families, no matter what the cost. I believe too often members of Congress and administrations as well have directed the VA to stay within an arbitrary and inadequate budget or to tighten eligibility standards for veterans. Is it any surprise then that the VA has responded overtly or covertly by creating more hoops veterans have to jump through and slow-walking claims processing in order to keep spending at or below a politically convenient level? Now, in no way am I excusing any negligence, poor performance, or law-breaking by VA management or personnel, but I want to make sure that people understand that Congress holds the purse strings and that most of the recent shortcomings at VA originated with decisions in Congress. Until we realize that fact, we're not going to be able to fix the VA and provide our veterans with the benefits that they are entitled to as a result of their service. I believe VA needs higher staffing levels today, especially with regards to issues like mental health and homelessness. We need better infrastructure as well, especially with regard to modern systems for tracking cases and keeping records. And the VA needs department-wide systematic reforms, especially with regard to the prompt, accurate, and compassionate administration of VA benefits. I believe that power and responsibility for achieving those goals lies with Congress. Congress could take a major step forward today simply by repealing the budget sequestration process, as VFW Commander-in-Chief John Stroud emphasized in his testimony before Congress in March. And until it does, the VA, the military, and dozens of other essential government programs, from the FBI to food safety inspections, will continue to be undermined by inadequate funding caps every year through at least 2021. Ours is the most richest, most technologically advanced country in the history of the world. It is shocking and unacceptable in this day and age, with the resources and technology we possess, that it could take a year or more for the VA to schedule a doctor's appointment, evaluate a veteran's claim, adjudicate an appeal, or get a homeless veteran off the street. Our veterans and their families deserve better. I promise you, I'll continue to do everything I can to make sure that Congress lives up to its responsibilities to our veterans, to our active duty personnel and their families. Thank all of you for your service to our country. God bless you all. Welcome to Pittsburgh.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Mike, we're back.